Hello to the beautiful people, the ladies, the fellas, the gentlemen, all you people out there right now. Thursday Night Football. Let's start Week 10. Can we just please start Week 10? Week 9 made it pretty evident on the Monday stream. Ended up losing 70% of my buy-in, about $3,000. But, Monday Night Football, we're like, all right, let's get this back. And then everything was looking nice. We profited a little bit in DFS, and the props were looking like a big night. And then Ray McCloud. A lot relied on Ray McCloud to go under 10.5 receiving yards, and he has a 12-yard reception. His only target, his only reception, barely ran any routes in the entire game late in the fourth quarter. And I said to myself, I had some heartburn or something. I don't know what's going on. I had to take some Tums in the middle of the night. I woke up right at the end of the game. It was like the second play I saw, and I said to myself, this is Week 9 in a nutshell. It was basically, I literally muttered that out loud. I was like, oh, that's basically Week 9 in a nutshell for me right there. So now we're back on the horse for Week 10, right? I saw you in the first look. Now we're here for this one. We saw you in the values. We're here to get this ball rolling. And we get a Lamar Jackson showdown. And like we said last time there was a Lamar Jackson showdown this year, it always seems like with the Lamar Jackson showdowns, there's not like another standout quarterback on the slate. Like you always have that one earlier in the year, it seems, each year with Mahomes. But other than that, you get like 4 or 5 other showdown slates with these Ravens now. And it's clear that Lamar's the best play in the slate. I don't know what to tell you. So first off, this is what I'll tell you. Hit the subscribe button. There's that. Let's get into this right now. You hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel. It helps you out. It makes me feel good. It makes you feel good, hopefully. And we pick each other up because that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, pay it forward. Go buy somebody a coffee today. It's $3 and it'll make their entire day. So, here's what you do. Ready? Lamar Jackson, $13,800. He is almost $3,000 more than anybody else on the slate. And it's justifiably so, right? It is crazy. He is almost, I've never seen a $14,000 player on a showdown slate, and I was surprised to not see it this time because every single time he's basically needed. I have him projected right now for 8 more points than anybody else on the slate, and that's if Tua plays. So I'm projecting in Tua right now. If Tua doesn't play and it's Jacoby Brissett, I will have Lamar Jackson for 10 points more than anybody else on the slate on a showdown slate where 10 points alone is a good score for most players. He's 10 points more than anybody else on the slate right now, right? I mean, he exploded last week with 120 rushing yards on the year, or in the game. He had 3 touchdowns, 266 passing. He's having his best passing season of his career. He's up there yet again with 75 rushing yards per game. Lamar is clear and obviously going to be a strong play. If you fade Lamar, right, it's more so talking about do I play him in the captain spot or not. If you're fading him just in your flex, if you're playing the Millie Maker in those types of contests, that makes sense. You can go ahead and you can fade him and you can get away with that. If you're playing anything of medium to smaller size, I'm not doing it. And even in the Millie Maker, I'm probably not fading Lamar Jackson because barring an injury, I really don't know how he's not needed unless you see that game from like 2 or 3 weeks ago, similar to what you got from Jalen Hurts, where the running backs have 4 rushing touchdowns and Lamar's sitting there with his like 50 rushing yards and 200 passing yards, but nothing else after that. So really just large field tournaments, if you're not able to leverage the field by maxing them out, that's where I would consider getting away from Lamar. That's about it. Single entry, 3 max, small fields especially, he's going to be damn near 100% on. Like if you're playing in the $250 contests or 250 person field sizes this week, Lamar Jackson is going to be 95 to 97% on. You're actually putting yourself at more risk, in my opinion, than not playing him. So next up, you start to get some of his playmakers. You get Hollywood Brown here, who Hollywood Brown has been playing fine this year. Bateman has been playing. You have not seen all 3 receivers, though. Maybe we'll see it this week with Sammy Watkins. Hasn't been playing. Sammy Watkins was a limited participant in the Monday injury report, their estimated injury report. So maybe that starts to take away from Marquise Brown. I would think it takes away from the rookie Bateman, if anybody at all. But in the last 3 games, and on the year he's having a great year, the last 3 games, though, he has a team high 130 routes. He has 10 targets per game, 30 targets in his last 3 games. Now has 10 or more targets in 3 out of his last 4 games, and he's number 2 in the NFL in deep targets. I currently have Hollywood Brown, though, and here's the thing. I only have him for 14.2 fantasy points. So that's the one concern here. Like, even if you have him projected for 15, he's kind of overpriced unless you factor in his ceiling, which you've seen it multiple times this year, multi-touchdown games. These deep attempts are always giving him opportunity, especially since Lamar's deep ball accuracy has taken a big step forward this year. So as it stands right now, for me, Hollywood Brown is not going to be a yes, just because of where his price point comes in and the fact that when we get to some of these players on the Dolphins pretty shortly, there's actually really strong plays on Miami this week that are cheaper, so it makes it so if I want to play Lamar, you get somewhat cheaper Miami plays, and then it's kind of, okay, pick your poison between, do you want Hollywood Brown? Do you want Tua if he is going to start? Currently projecting him in. He got scratched in week 9 with the finger. He was put on the Monday limited report, or the estimated report, as being limited. He has played 4 full games this year, right? He left 1 game early. He ended up getting scratched, missing a couple games. He's thrown 39 or more times in 3 out of 4 of those games, right? He's averaging 257 yards passing per game, and we've seen him steadily getting better now as Jalen Waddle Waddle's coming into his own, as Mike Gesicki is just being used primarily as a wide receiver at this point. So I do like what we're seeing out of Tua. So if he does start, and if by the time you're watching this he's already ruled out, then you slide in Jacoby Brissett. I'm not as interested in Jacoby Brissett at his price tag. He will be in play for me, but he will not be a yes. But for Tua's standards, yeah, Tua is a yes. I actually prefer Tua right now to Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, I would say, has a clear and obviously higher ceiling, but I have Tua projecting out for almost 5 more fantasy points than Hollywood Brown at this point. And as an 8.5 point underdog with a 20 implied team total, which is not terrible, as a 8.5 point underdog, I'm expecting close to those 40 attempts, which he's gone over in 2 out of his 4 games so far this season. Then you get Myles Gaskin, and this is kind of a head scratcher for me. I'm a little bit interested as why Myles Gaskin is this high. Now, coming into week 9, Myles Gaskin, his snap count was dropping. Salvon Ahmed was getting much more involved, right? Salvon Ahmed now 3 straight games or 9 or more opportunities. Whereas you've had Myles Gaskin's dropping his snap count, and then he goes out and he ties his season high with a 72% snap count, Myles Gaskin, in week 9. So now he's $9,400. So the $9,400 is just the odd thing. Like you've seen in the last 3 games without Devontae Parker for Myles Gaskin, 70 routes run. He's had 16 targets in 3 games, which is obviously great, right? Over 5 targets per game, 12 receptions. And then on the ground, he has 40 carries in 3 games, which is just average, right? He's averaging 13 fantasy points per game over the last 3 games with no Devontae Parker. Having that season high 73% just by a marginal season high in week 9 snap count. But if you're looking at this now, like 13 fantasy points per game for Myles Gaskin, he doesn't project out for me for that 13 points per game that he's been seeing the last 3 games, because as of right now, I mean, his team is 8.5 point underdogs, never great for running backs. Ahmed has been involved as well in the receiving game, not as much as Gaskin, of course, but that's going to be factored into the projection. 11.2 fantasy points is where I have him at right now on Patreon with the projections, the rankings, the ownership, all that type of stuff. We have an optimizer now for not just NFL, but all the sports I cover: NBA, MMA, PGA, MLB when that's in season. So check it all out down below at Discord with 1,000+ members. Get in there. If you're not in there and if you're not in the community right now, come on, get souped up. Put your backpack on of information and intel and take out the competition in the DFS contests. So come on in. We'll see you in there. Linked down below. But yeah, I would say that Myles Gaskin right now, if we're looking at all of the players currently priced above, let's say $7,000, Gaskin projects out as the guy that I have that is actually the most overpriced. I won't take him out of play completely right now, but if you're playing in a 1 lineup, a single entry, something like that, he's probably going to end up being a no for me, hard to get to. The reason why, though, we have to wait and see is because, of course, ownership can dictate some things here. If he is massively under-owned and becomes a leverage play, well, obviously, based on the fact that we do think he touches the ball somewhere around 15, 16 times, he has 2 touchdowns upside then. Now we start to get to some of these plays that do stand out to me. I think that this is a very fair price point on Mark Andrews. I don't think he's overpriced. I don't think he's underpriced. Over his last 3 games, he's averaging around 32 routes run per game. He's seen 22 targets during that time, so you're getting about 7 targets per game now as they start to throw a little bit more. Lamar obviously again playing really well, but he hasn't topped 10 fantasy points since week 6. But before that, he ended up having 11+ fantasy points week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So he's producing then. He just hasn't gotten there lately, and that's basically because he hasn't found the end zone. But with a 27-team implied total, Mark Andrews at $8,800 is firmly in play this week, and you get a $2,000+ discount off of the other main option in this offense in Marquise Brown. Now, maybe Mark Andrews has been slumping a little bit because Rashad Bateman is now actually in this offense. But the guys that I really want to talk about, and the reason why Mark Andrews is not a yes and Hollywood Brown is not a yes, like maybe they are in some of these Ravens slates, is these next 2 Miami guys, Jaylen Waddle and Mike Gesicki. And we can start with Jaylen Waddle. These guys are massively underpriced. Devontae Parker is on IR now. These guys are competing with Matt Collins, who's running a lot of routes but can't get separation. Albert Wilson, who's struggling to even get on the field at this point. Preston Williams will be back in the rotation, but not a priority. I mean, there's a guy named Kirk Merritt who ended up seeing 3 targets for the Dolphins last week, right? That's who they're competing with. And whether it is Jacoby Brissett or it is Tua out there, these guys are still seeing the targets and volume from both of those guys. So Jaylen Waddle's last 3 games without Devontae Parker out there, he's seen a team high 125 routes. He's seen 31 targets in 3 games and averaging 20.2 fantasy points per game in those 3 games, right? 10+ targets in 3 out of his last 4 games, 8+ targets in each of his past 4 games. So Jaylen Waddle for me looks fantastic. I have Jaylen Waddle right now projecting out as a player who should be in the $9,000 range at almost 15 fantasy points. He is going to be a yes for me. And before we talk about Mike Gesicki, we can talk about the sponsor of the program, SuperDraft. A lot of you are already on SuperDraft. We're actually going to build out a lineup here on SuperDraft as we go through this, and we can start with the guy who I think is the best captain option, the man we just talked about, and Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle is right now my highest projected SuperDraft play as it stands as of this recording by 3 points. And 3 points is a lot. I mean, think about that in DFS or in DraftKings, but if you transition it over to SuperDraft where there's no salary caps, it's based on multipliers, so it's very projection heavy. He's my highest projected player. Let's put him in there for right now. If you're not familiar with SuperDraft, you get a free bet up to $25. You put in $25, you get $25 right back at deposit match, so free $25. And the contests don't fill fully over there. They're filling more and more as the season goes on because I'm their main promoter, and a lot of people have heard about it now, but it's not filling at 100%. It'll fill at 80% a lot of their contests, and that's just for the NFL. NFL, other sports like NBA don't fill that highly, which that means if it fills at 80%, you beat 20% of the field just by entering a lineup. That's never going to happen on DraftKings or FanDuel for you. Your best chance at winning money, at winning any type of dollar rooskies is going to be over on SuperDraft because you're facing 20% less of the competition. It is that simple. If you're in a race and you're trying to win the race, you're trying to win a 5K and you have to choose a race. If you win that race, you win money just like DFS. And in one race, there's 800 people and the other race, there's 1,000 people, but you're getting the same payout either way. It's the same buy-in. Why would you not choose the race with the 800 people? You have to beat less people, right? You have to beat less people to finish top 200 to get paid or top 1%, top 1 overall to win the big prize. Go ahead. SuperDraft. Code SAL, 25 free bucks. There you go. Let's build this lineup out. Jaylen Waddle, captain. Now let's get back into some of the DFS plays on DraftKings. The teammate of Jaylen Waddle is going to be on here in Mike Gesicki, who's basically just being used as a wide receiver, especially with Devontae Parker out. He gets used out wide, not just he's in the slot no matter what, but now out wide a lot more, and he continues to get linebackers on him. They're not giving him the Kyle Pitts treatment when they're putting Marshawn Lattimore and Stephon Gilmore on the really good tight end. No, they're just still putting linebackers on him, or scrubbier cornerbacks, I should say, like your second or third options. So Mike Gesicki, his last 3 games without Devontae Parker, he's averaging right now close to 40 routes run per game, which is just insane. He's had 30 or more routes in each of his past 4 games, and he's seen 25 targets during those last 3 games. So that's over 8 targets per game, averaging 16.8 fantasy points per game as a tight end. And yes, that includes a Jacoby Brissett game that just passed this past week. He leads all tight ends in the NFL in slot snaps. The usage is elite for Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki I don't have projected as highly as Jaylen Waddle, but I actually do have Mike Gesicki as it stands for more fantasy points to Mark Andrews. This is an interesting thing to point out right now. I have Mike Gesicki for more fantasy points to Mark Andrews, so the other tight end in Baltimore, who's $1,400 more. And I have Jaylen Waddle as it stands right now for more fantasy points than Hollywood Brown. And Hollywood Brown is almost $3,000 more than Jaylen Waddle. Again, I expect ownership to maybe sway how I think about these players, but as it stands right now, the Miami guys and Jaylen Waddle and Mike Gesicki look like supreme values on this slate. And now we start to get into some of the murky situations. With Latavius Murray not playing in the last 2 games, there's a bye week in between there. Latavius Murray did not play. He was did not perform or did not practice DNP on the Monday estimated injury report. So now he has not played in week 7, bye in week 8, did not play in week 9. He was playing 50+% of the snaps in week 4 and week 5 before getting hurt in week 6. So he was starting to become the lead back in this backfield. But as it stands right now, Latavius Murray, we don't know the status. I'm assuming he's not going to play. We'll know obviously as the week goes on. But even if he does play, 3-headed backfield, $7,000. He really has to be a touchdown or maybe probably even multiple touchdowns or bust at that price tag, factoring in that he's going to play probably 50% of the snaps. And then everything just starts to trickle down from there. Devonta Freeman in week 9 without Latavius Murray played really well. 13 carries, 79 yards, saw 3 targets on 29 routes. He operated as the clear running back 1 in that offense, running 50 or playing 58% of the snaps. I have Devonta Smith right now for about 7.5 fantasy points though. Devonta Smith is in this range like we've talked about on a couple of showdown slates lately, as he is a touchdown or bust player. Devonta Smith is completely out of play if Latavius Murray plays. If Latavius Murray doesn't play, he's touchdown or bust, meaning that if he can find the end zone, he could probably score you somewhere around 10 to 12 fantasy points, and that keeps him at least in play. But I like these guys a lot more. I like Rashad Bateman, the rookie. I like them coming out. He has now had 3 career games in the NFL. He has ran 100 routes, so good usage, 33 routes run per game. He has seen 19 targets in 3 games, and this is on a team with Mark Andrews. This is on a team with Marquise Brown, right, a former first-round pick in his own right. That is over 6 targets per game, and if there's not going to be Watkins, which there has not been in those first 3 games, so you have to point that out. If Watkins does not play, he was limited on Monday on the estimated report. If Watkins is not able to practice and play this week, Rashad Bateman looks like a very good play, like projecting out for near double digits below $6,000, which is supreme and actually really good value on a showdown slate. Now, that will change if Sammy Watkins, who is here for a little bit less money, is going to be on the slate and actually playing. And if Watkins does play, I assume the fact that he's been banged up, I assume the fact that Rashad Bateman has been playing well and is the rookie, the flashier name, similar price points, I would assume Bateman sees more ownership, and that's where a leverage play and Sammy Watkins can definitely come in play. So if Watkins does play, I do like him, especially if the ownership points that way. But as it stands with the information we have of this recording, it'll be Bateman in this range. And now you start to get to some plays that just don't look good. Like Le'Veon Bell is going to be the running back 2 at best this week. He looked good last week in terms of 11 carries, 48 yards, and a touchdown. No targets though on 5 routes. So they're not using him in the passing game. They're giving those responsibilities to Devonta Freeman. So if there is Latavius Murray, he's just a no for me at this price tag. If there is no Latavius Murray, you can expect Le'Veon Bell in this game to probably see somewhere around, especially as big favorites, 8.5 point favorites, in a solid matchup against Miami's run defense. You can probably see him 10 to 12 touches, and if he's going to have 10 to 12 touches at 5,400, he's going to be exactly what Devonta Freeman is, on less touches though, a touchdown or bust. So if Le'Veon Bell does what he does last week, that would be a 10.4 fantasy point day. It's not what you want at all at $5,400. That's why even touchdowns don't really get you there, but at least keeps him in play for a guy seeing double-digit touches on a showdown slate. I think he's overpriced. If you're playing a single lineup, I'm not playing Devonta Freeman. I'm not playing Le'Veon Bell. I'm sticking to these wide receivers. I'm sticking to the Miami guys that we already talked about. But if you're playing 150s, if you're playing 20 max, I think these guys have to be in play because if they get 10 to 15 touches, they obviously have touchdown upside especially when they have a 27 team implied total, especially when their team is going to be favored by this much. So let's go back quickly to the super draft lineup we're building. We'll add Mike Gesicki, who Mike Gesicki, as it stands right now, is basically tied for like my second highest projected play in the slate with a couple of other players. And then we'll actually add Rashad Bateman. Now, Bateman is not my second or third highest projected. He's right around like the fifth highest projected, so definitely in play, but I just like his multiplier. A 2.25x multiplier. They're giving Rashad Bateman the exact same multiplier as Le'Veon Bell, who I don't think has much upside, as Justin Tucker, a kicker, who I guess looks fine, but not as much upside, as Tyshawn Williams. Tyshawn Williams, at best, going to be the running back 3 on this team for this game. Might not even be active. Has the same multiplier, basically, as Rashad Bateman. That makes no sense to me, right? Similar multipliers to other guys like Preston Williams and Salvon Ahmed. Makes no sense. So you add these two guys. We have to fill in 2 more spots as the video goes on, but I think this is a very good and solid start so far to this Super Draft lineup. Again, the code SAL gets you a free bet and just matches it. You put in 25, they give you an extra $25 to play. Your best chance of winning dollar whiskeys this week will be over on Super Draft, the proud sponsors of this here program. We keep going down. I think Devin Duvernay is going to be overpriced here. Devin Duvernay at best will be the wide receiver 3, but behind Mark Andrews, so technically the 4th option in the passing game if Sammy Watkins is out. Sammy Watkins is in, it gets even worse. But over these last 3 games, basically since Sammy Watkins has been out, you're seeing 72 routes run. That's 24 routes per week and 6 targets. So he's getting 2 targets a game. He ended up finding the end zone. So again, there's that touchdown or bust standpoint, right? 5 catches, 34 yards and a touchdown over the last 3 games is not great, right? That's not great at all. If he doesn't get the touchdown in there, he's averaging like 2 fantasy points per game. So I think you should expect 20 routes and 1 to 3 targets. I'm personally not going to be going to Devin Duvernay in anything on my end as of this recording, unless some news pops up about something wrong with Rashad Bateman, but not going to be getting there, especially if Sammy Watkins is going to be in. You get the defenses here. If you want to play Baltimore's defense, go for it. I currently have Baltimore's defense projecting for 6.4 points. I'll prefer some cheaper players who have upside, like the next guy on here in Matt Collins. Matt Collins, if he's going to project for similar points to the Baltimore defense, if he led this team last week, believe it or not, with no Devontae Parker with 40 routes run. Now, Preston Williams for the Dolphins is expected to return this week, but we've seen Matt Collins outrun him in that London game as well, so I think he's actually going to stay ahead of him. At this point, though, I mean, he's not getting separation. That was his problem when he was with the Eagles, and he just never got separation, just running wind sprints nonstop. So he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in this team more than likely. In week 9, he ended up seeing 6 targets, brought in 3 of them, had a touchdown, and you should expect in this one, I think, somewhere around 4 or 5 or 6 targets at $4,200. He's close to a yes for me. I'll say that. He's close to a yes for me because of how much usage he's going to get. We can put him as a yes just to kind of separate some of these guys in the 4K range. Another yes, and probably lean more so in smaller field tournaments. Like if you're playing in a smaller field tournament, I would go probably to Justin Tucker. Just take the safe 6 to 10 plus points there, projecting out for me for close to 10 points. If you're playing in a larger field tournament, a big GPP, the Millie Maker type, I think Matt Collins' upside then starts to come into play there in terms of being a wide receiver running routes, has a touchdown upside. But Tucker is the preferred kicker for obvious reasons, and in this one, just projection-wise, going to look a lot better. Teams projected to score more points. Dolphins defense, if you want to play them, they're nice at $2,800. It's nice when you get these cheaper defenses below 3K, so even if they project out for like 5 points, it does indeed keep them in play. But now we start to get to a range where you're trying to find value down here, and there's just a lot of guys who look okay. Like none of them look elite. Some look better than others. Like Durham Smythe got poked in the eye, left the last game early, came back in though. He's been playing fine lately. He's the clear tight end 2 in this team. In that last game, or over the last 3 games with no Devontae Parker, he has 52 routes, 5 catches, 64 yards on 6 targets. So expect a couple of targets here, right? Expect somewhere between 1 and 3 targets. Expect more times than not somewhere around 2 to 4 fantasy points. So I guess it keeps him in play, but nothing elite. Tyshawn Williams should be the running back 3 in this game. I'm projecting him out right now for about 4.5 fantasy points. Actually makes him a solid option if there's no Latavius Murray. Tyshawn Williams did not see much work last week at all. He ended up being active for that game, playing 18% of the snaps, but did not get a carry and saw 0 targets on 11 routes run. So he leans towards like a no. Like these guys don't look great. Like they're projecting out for like 2 or 3 points. We start to get like Patrick Rashard is basically a fullback. He's seen a couple of receptions, found the end zone over the last couple of games. I've been projecting out as it stands for like 2 fantasy points. I don't really want to go there. The only guy down here who looks good, and I'm surprised he's $800, is Salvon Ahmed. Salvon Ahmed has seen 9 opportunities in 3 straight games. I'm surprised that a player on a showdown slate who has seen 9 or more opportunities, 9 exactly, I think, in 3 straight games with passing game work and 2 targets in 3 straight games. I'm surprised that he's down here. Now he's only playing like 20% of the snaps on average, but you've gotten 5, 7, and 4 fantasy points each of these last couple of games. If he goes out there and has a 6 fantasy point day at $800, that might be needed, and it probably will in a lot of stances. So I think Salvon Ahmed is definitely in play. If you're looking for somebody below $2,000 and even below $3,000, Ahmed kind of seems like the guy who stands out the most. Adam Shaheen, I believe the former had a bad injury with the Bears, if that's the same player, same tight end. He's the clear tight end 3 on this team. I mean, they use a lot of tight ends. He ran 18 routes a season high last week, but Durham Smythe left with the eye poke for a little while, so that's kind of why I was up there. Seen 32 routes over the last 2 weeks, seeing 6 targets. I guess you can say he's in play, but I'll prefer Ahmed. I have Adam Shaheen projected for 3 points, Ahmed for around 6. Albert Wilson's on here. He's going to drop down in the pecking order with Preston Williams back. James Prochet is on here. He's like the wide receiver 4 or 5 on this team if Sammy Watkins is out, right? It gets worse for him if Sammy Watkins is in. He's only seen 19 total routes these last 3 games. I'm not that interested. Josh Oliver, tight end, actually saw no usage in week 9. Then there was the bye week. The week before that, though, he saw 5 targets, right? Only caught 2 balls, really no usages at all. Basically seeing 7 targets or 7 routes per game other than that nice week in week 7. I'm not going to go there. Kirk Merritt. So Kirk Merritt, I've never heard of him until I was looking for the research for the show. He operated as the wide receiver 5, where he's going to with Preston Williams back. He did see 3 targets on 8 routes run last week, his first usage of the season, Kirk Merritt. I don't think he's actually going to get that this week, no, with Preston Williams back. And even then, 8 routes run is not great. Preston Williams is the only other guy on here. I actually do think he's in play. He's close to a yes for me because he'll operate as the wide receiver 3 in this offense, you would imagine, ahead of Albert Wilson. He might even take some routes away from Matt Collins. Preston Williams ended up running 46 routes total in week 5 and week 7. And then he did not play in week 9, so you ended up getting those 46 routes. So if you get Preston Williams running even 15 routes, but there's upside for 20 routes here, and gets a couple targets at just $200, this is a tall, lengthy receiver. Before tearing his ACL his rookie year, he's playing very well with Ryan Fitzpatrick, had a good connection with him. So $200 Preston Williams, he's going to be out there running some routes, I would imagine. So just track the status of him actually playing, but as of right now, he's expected to. I think he's actually in play if you're looking for a $200 pump play. That is where I would go. That's why I don't think you can go to Prochet or Oliver or Kirk Merritt, because Preston Williams is there and we know he's going to get some usage. So let's close up building a lineup here. I mean, you can kind of fill in the last 2 options. I'll give you some options though. Like in terms of who's my highest projecting guys left, Lamar, but he only has a 1x multiplier. Tua, if he plays, looks really good, a 1.45x multiplier. I think we could put Tua in a lineup like this. And then it's a hodgepodge. Then it's like if you're playing one lineup, you're kind of somewhat guessing. Like Lamar is the highest projected guy left for me, but you're not getting the nice multiplier on him. Other guys who look good, especially when you factor in their multipliers, are going to be Mark Andrews at a 1.8x multiplier. That's probably the best guy remaining. Myles Gaskin and Justin Tucker look like solid options as well. So that's some of the options you can put for this last spot. Again, if you use the code SAL, it supports the program. It supports what we're doing here. It allows them to continue to stay as a sponsor here and keep these shows free on YouTube. So use the code SAL. You put 25 in, you get 25 right back, additional money. The best spot that you should personally be playing right now at your first Dollarooskies, because you're facing 20% less people for the same amount of payout, for the same amount of Dollarooskies, right? For the same amount of opportunity and upside. So go ahead, get that right now. I appreciate you tuning in for this one. Like before you go this video, subscribe if you enjoyed it. If you made it this point, double check to make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you in the next one, gang. So this is what's going to happen. Top stacks on Thursday morning tomorrow, and then Thursday night we're going to be live right here. So be sure to be there or be square. I'll see you when I see you, and I'll see you in the next one.